You already know what it is. It's your boy Lightwalker X here, back with another video, and I am recording this literally fresh, like I am outside the theater as we speak, literally fresh out of the theater for Superman, and I feel like I got a good amount of things to say about this film. Now, I am a big fan of Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, not a fan entirely of how the universe went overall, but a fan of his take on Superman. But at the same time, I can understand the faults that are in the film, and that I can understand the many issues that a lot of people had with that particular take on Superman. So I definitely get it. I'm not one of the hardcore stans that's like, oh no, I can't like this movie, I can't like the original, I can't like both. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm here just for the betterment of DC, but I would have preferred personally to see Henry Cavill return. Once I realized that wasn't happening, I had to adjust, right? I had to accept. And I knew if James Gunn could deliver a Superman that was timely, that made sense, that could rebirth and give hope for the new DC universe, I would give him credit. And I would say, after watching this film, that there is potential for this new DC universe. Does it give me the full hope that I was looking for in terms of spring starting a new universe? Not entirely. I did have my concerns, as I've expressed over many videos that I've done in the past on my channel about Superman, that were still present in the film that I watched today. But I don't want to say that it was a horrible watch. I did enjoy myself. I did find things that I liked, but there was obviously things that I had some issues with as a DC fan. Now, I did like that there was an opening text. There's like a kind of a Star Wars opening scroll text informing you of what has happened in the last few years leading up to this film, and kind of establishing the new start for this new DC universe. I really did like that. That kind of was something that we've never really seen before in the previous DC films, and it adds a new spice to this film and this particular take of Superman. And I think it honestly kind of, in a good way, rushes the establishment of metahumans as superheroes in this universe, because they don't waste any time at all. Like, they waste no time getting into the action, getting into metahumans exist. Oh, this is what it is. There's spaceships, there's pocket dimensions, there's universes, there's all these different gadgets and gizmos. Regular people can fly ships. Like, there's no new threats in terms of, there's nothing new under the sun at this point in this universe. It looks like they've seen everything, and anything is possible. And if you know DC and DC lore, that's definitely what it is in the comics. So I do commend him for doing that, because when we see in the trailers that he was definitely going for a new Superman that was already established a couple years in, I thought that was a very genius way to start, because we haven't really seen that in a while. But I knew that it would be a risk. It's either you're going to alienate the audiences and appease to the comic fans who kind of understand everything, or you're going to hit the mark and be able to get that perfect median. And I feel like that's so difficult to do. So I'll cut him a little slack on that. As a fan, I did love how he kind of just springboarded into everything, because I understood. But if you're not a fan, then I don't know if you would understand some things. You might be confused at some parts, because there's even a couple things that I was confused at. But I could imagine, as like a regular moviegoer, like what your take on some of these things would be, like how you're going to interpret them. I'm so interested to know, as like a casual moviegoer, what was your take on how they introduced this universe, because so much stuff was going on right away. So I want to know if that flustered anybody, because like I said, as a fan, we understand that. I get it. But as someone that's a casual moviegoer, you might be a little confused and maybe a little overwhelmed from what you're seeing on screen. The transition in the very beginning of the film, like when they introduced the Superman text and the logo, kind of reminded me of like something from the early 2000s, like late 90s, which I thought was like, okay, right? It's cool, but I think some people might find that a little dated. I guess you'll see when you guys actually watch the film. And it's an opening scroll, it's an opening text. It's nothing too major, but I think that kind of does summarize the film in a sense where, for Superman, what I'll say is that, to me, it didn't really feel like a Superman film. Like, half the time it felt like a Justice Gang film. Those are the other characters in the film. And it felt like not a rogues gallery, but it felt like an ensemble film, right? And we obviously knew there was a whole bunch of other characters that would be casted in this film that we're seeing. And like I said, if you plan to do that to start your universe, that would be commendable if you hit the mark, but it's also a risk, because, like I said, you can alienate casual moviegoers. And at the same time, with all this stuff going on, it's kind of hard to focus on Superman, right? Where I feel like a lot of people critiqued Henry Cavill's Superman and Man of Steel. He didn't have too much life to his character. He didn't fully, to them, embody what Superman was. And I feel like they definitely showed the hope factor to Superman in this film. Not only did he inspire the people of Earth, but he definitely did inspire the superheroes and metahumans as well to be better, to achieve better, and to have hope. And I feel like that was very good because we didn't really sort of get the right depiction of that hope from Zack Snyder, Man of Steel. Despite me liking it, I can admit that. So I think this film definitely has that up on Man of Steel, but at the same time, I feel like Man of Steel was more epic. And I feel like that's where Zack Snyder shines. He's more of the epic, grand director with the amazing visuals and stuff like that and the sequences. But when it comes to the story beats or character development, things like that, he may not shine in those areas. So this film definitely felt like a superhero film and a hero film and a somewhat action film, but the epicness of the Zack Snyder of what we've gotten in previous DC aspects and DC films and stuff like that, we don't really get that in this movie. A lot of the action, I feel like the last sequence in the film, when you guys see it, the very last sequence in the movie, I think did Superman justice with the action, but for the rest of the movie, you don't really see Superman fighting like that. He's also, more underpowered in this film, and I get it. We're not going to have the most strongest Superman in the first film, but they said it's based off of All-Star Superman, so that's where I'm a little confused, because if you didn't know, All-Star Superman is very, very powerful, right? So that's where I was kind of confused, but I get it. For the narrative, you got to underpower him, and I'm thinking long-term, after we get a trilogy of Superman films, eventually we'll see him be more stronger at that point, but until then, they're going to build it up. So I'm thinking long-term, this will probably make more sense. If you're thinking short-term in the moment, you're going to be like, I don't know. I'm assuming in the second film and in the third film, we're going to see Superman do a lot more adventures, and he's going to get into a lot more things, a lot more conflicts, and we're going to see a lot more action. But the action, for the most part, to me, doesn't compare to what we got in Man of Steel, or the way that he sequences action in that film specifically. It was very Dragon Ball Z, very stuck to the character, and I really liked it how the camera was mounted to our characters like Superman or Zod or whoever he was fighting, where we actually felt like we were right there and flying with him. As for this, the action to me kind of felt flat, too CGI-ish sometimes, and a little wonky, and it kind of takes you out of it. And when I watched Man of Steel, and I remember watching it for the first time, that experience of seeing that action for the first time was insane. I couldn't even believe it. And I was really hoping that James Gunn could mimic that, if not make his own unique taste to the action. And unfortunately, I walk away from this and I don't really feel like he has that unique spin in terms of the visual spectacle. And the action plays a part in that too. The camera work, I feel like there was this reoccurring shot they like to use a lot, where it was there was a lot of motion, right? There was a lot of panning, there was a lot of 360s, there was a lot of movement, and the CGI didn't really look complete. Certain points, other parts it did look fantastic, but then there were other parts where it was like, and we noticed that in the trailer, and obviously you don't want to see that in a Superman film. And I go back to Man of Steel because that's the immediate comparison, and I'm like, in Man of Steel, how were they able to get the CGI so good? But that was 12, 13 years ago. When you compare it to now, you would expect it to be a lot better. The expectation is that the CGI should be able to deliver, but it's not just DC, it's not just James Gunn, it's Marvel, it's a lot of movies right now. The CGI is just not cutting it. And I find that Superman has some good points with some CGI, but at the same time had some bad points as well. A little wonky, a little unfinished. But overall, I still think they were able to communicate its own style, its own introduction into the universe. It was very distinct. Like I said, you do see a lot of heroes on screen. There's a lot going on, and that creates its own unique spin on Superman. So James Gunn can say that, right? But at the same time, you alienate the people who are there for a Superman film, because at times it doesn't really feel like a Superman film. Yeah, and I'm glad that they showed more emphasis on Superman saving people and actually being a hero and stuff like that, rather than being reckless. But I think that what I liked about this film, that they approached Superman being reckless with his mentality, him being naive and learning who to trust, and learning that you can't just trust anyone. I think that's a battle that all of us go through at some point. So I felt like that was relatable. And modernizing Superman, I feel like it's very difficult to modernize Superman, and they did that with the news, with everybody picking him apart, every decision he makes. We did see that in Man of Steel, but it was more emphasized here with the social media, with how online narratives work, and how you have to shift the narrative using, techniques using online stuff. Like, I did like that a lot. Lex Luthor was unhinged as hell. If I ever seen an unhinged Lex, this was the one right here. I know Jesse Eisenberg, we don't talk about that. That was a Riddler pretty much. But this Lex, unhinged. And I saw that some people were saying they weren't really okay with the take. I very much like serious Lex Luthor. So this wasn't really serious Lex Luthor outside of a couple sequences in the film. But that serious, scary, intimidating Lex Luthor, I'm all here for it. Like I said earlier, I think in retrospect, when we all look back at this after 3 films and maybe more movies where they bring Superman in, I think Lex will develop into that Lex. As of right now, I can see people not liking the take, and I understand why. But I actually kind of like this perspective on Lex that James Gunn did, making him rabidly obsessive, because he is, and there's takes of him like that. But I like this take. It's very modern. It works very well for what an obsessive billionaire, trillionaire with nothing left to do but, have an issue with the one person who's saving everybody in the world. This is what he would do, right? So that felt very realistic, and I did like that a lot. And I'm excited to see where they take this Lex Luthor going forward. I don't know what they do going forward. I really want a Superman 2 right away. I think we shouldn't waste any time on that, but I'm very curious to see what they do with Lex Luthor going forward. It's going to be very interesting because they leave him in a very interesting place, and I think there's so much more you can develop to his character and to what we know Lex Luthor is in the long run. Lois and Superman, I actually like their relationship, and I bought into it. I bought into their relationship a lot more than I did for Man of Steel with Henry Cavill and Amy Adams, because I didn't really care about Lois Lane's story at that point in Man of Steel. At least when they developed it more long-term. Man of Steel, she was fine, but after that, it just was like, okay, I feel like Lois Lane in this film definitely combated him, but it felt like the right amount at the same time. It wasn't like she was undermining him. It wasn't like she was being a nuisance to him. She was very much serving her purpose in the film. And I feel like they actually got it right with Lois Lane. This is what she should be doing, investigative journalism. And I think they brought it together nice. And I think their relationship, from walking away, what I feel seeing them in this film, I think they brought it together very well. I'm sure there's going to be much room for them to grow and how they build this relationship between the two of them. But it was done right. And I always said, I'm like, there's not much that you have to do to establish a Lois Lane and Superman story, but you have to make these characters likable. And I feel like they made Superman likable enough, I should say. And they made Lois Lane likable, right? She had a lot more of the funny jokes in the film, in my opinion, that I didn't really see a lot of people catch up on, but I did. And I was like, okay, I like this Lois. She's, funny. She's snarky. That's kind of what I want at the same time. But when she gets into journalist mode, she doesn't cut Superman any slack. And it's nice to see that switch. And you'll see in the film that they bring the whole storyline between the two of them and her perspective on journalism and his idea of hope and being a superhero and a responsible one at that. You see them bring that together very well at the end of the film. So I did like this take on Superman and Lois's relationship. Lois as a character, I did like in this film compared to her Man of Steel counterpart, which it was okay. Nothing too memorable, obviously, from that. Also, the comedy, I have to say that a lot of the comedy didn't land. I don't know if it was just my theater or maybe you guys can let me know how the comedy was received in yours, but comedy didn't land for the most part. There were jokes, there was, funny parts in there that were noticeable, but for the most part, the comedy kind of was a little odd. Sometimes it's a little confusing of what was going on. I was like, what's happening here? I don't know if I should laugh or I should be kind of like weirded out or should this be concerning? Like, yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on where I'm like, okay, the comedy, I don't know. I don't think this really works for Superman. Kind of felt like a different movie at times. But nonetheless, I feel like that's just James Gunn's humor. And I could have done with a little less of it in this film, in my opinion. I don't need the film to be serious like a Man of Steel where there's barely any jokes and stuff like that. But I feel like he could have toned it down a good amount for this film, just because sometimes it does take you out. Sometimes it does feel like we're not even in a Superman film, right? So I would probably dial back maybe a lot on the comedy going into the second film. Not saying Superman should be dull, but at least the comedy that you were putting into this film specifically, it just kind of took me out of it. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it represents Superman, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how I feel about the comedy in the film. But overall, those are my raw thoughts of Superman. And after thinking about the film and going over it for the last 30 minutes or so as I'm doing this review, I would have to give the film a first thoughts review. This might change and probably will change as I sit with it, because that's the type of film I think it is. I would have to give the film a 5 out of 10. And the only reason why is because I did enjoy it. I am going to revisit it, and I think this might bump up to a 6, just because I feel like this film, when you sit with it and digest it, and we let all the online narratives and all the craziness that's around the divisiveness of the movie go away, I think it'll be fine. Do I think that it's a better Superman film than Man of Steel? Me personally, I feel like there's a lot of things that it does better than Man of Steel, but I don't think overall it's my preferred Superman take, if that makes sense. And I really did want to walk away with this Superman being the one that I really wanted to go into the stratosphere as my number one Superman, but Henry Cavill's still my number one Superman. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I'm not writing off this Superman, and I'm excited to see what they do. My fingers are crossed that they eventually bring this Superman with Robert Pattinson's Batman. Now, I can hear you guys now. Oh my God, no, we want 2 Batmans. If you guys know my channel, I am not for 2 Batmans. And I think this Superman would work very well with Robert Pattinson's Batman. But fingers crossed, that's a whole nother video and a can of worms in itself, and we'd have to wait to see how the universe does. But it's my idea that if Superman does well and performs well, the chances of them bringing the universes together are stronger. And whatever they do going forward, I just want DC to succeed. So I will return to watch the film. I am going to do a spoiler breakdown of this film, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty. I'm just so curious to hear what you guys think of this film. How did you interpret it? Are you a fan of DC? Are you not? Are you a casual? And I want to hear your thoughts about the film overall, because I left wanting more, but at the same time, somewhat in a way satisfied, because I know there's more potential down the line. And I think long term, I don't always think in the moment when it comes to these films. So long term, I think there's a lot of potential with this start to DC, and I really want a Superman 2. I don't really care to have all these other spin-off films. I want a Superman 2 right away. That should be greenlit right now. We should be getting that in 2 years. But I don't know what's going on with James Gunn. I don't know what's going on with DC. We'll have to wait and see. But until then, I'm letting you guys know. First review, 5 out of 10 for Superman. I think it's a good watch. It's a decent watch. You can have some fun. You know, take your girlfriend, take whoever you want out, enjoy it. But at the same time, I still think there's a few decisions that James Gunn made that I would have changed. Obviously, working on action that feels more like it's with Superman and more built on spectacle, while keeping the storyline and the character development and the character beats that you had in the film, because I feel like those are some of the strong points, right? So when it comes to the spectacle, I would like that more enhanced, right? For it to feel more like Gods and Monsters, because that's the era that James Gunn is claiming that this phase is called overall, Gods and Monsters. So I want to build to that. I want to feel like this is Gods and Monsters and not kind of like Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy adjacent. You know what I mean? That's what I want. So I'm hoping from the second film we get more of that opera-like cinematic action that feels very grand and spectacle, while keeping the story beats that he had. I would dial a lot less on the comedy. I would like a lot less of that in terms of how he does his comedy. Not comedy in general, but specifically some of the comedic jokes he puts in there I'm not really a fan of, and I'm just like, okay, I could have done without that. And refined CGI. I know that's something that's more on the studio side. That's more on the people that they employ. That's on them. But we should be getting better CGI, better action sequences overall with the look of the film in 2025. It's 2025. Come on, guys. Like, do what you need to do to deliver the experience. Because if the CGI is wonky, it takes people out. Sometimes it was reminding me of The Flash. Sometimes it was reminding me of Black Adam. They had that famous Black Adam shot where you see his head like very pushed out in the screen. Yeah, there's just certain things that I don't want to see. You shouldn't look to The Flash and say, let's take something from that. I liked how the visuals look from that, because I don't think The Flash was good at all. But that's just me. I think that James Gunn has something here, And I do hope that if a sequel comes or when it comes, it's a lot better than this. And I think he does have the potential to one-up himself. I honestly would prefer if he does get another director to direct the second Superman film. So that means he could, spend time overseeing DC and he doesn't have to stress about bringing this character and other characters to life. He can just overlook everything, kind of like a Kevin Feige. But that is my raw, unfiltered review of Superman. I would love to hear your thoughts about this film below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. We're going to have more videos about this and Superman and DC for all summer and going forward as long as there's news. So you guys stay tuned. And you guys let me know down below what you think of Superman. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and stay blessed and stay tuned.
Tell me, I don't wanna talk on no celly. You know I got language barriers. There's no accent you can sell me. You're cold and ivory, I'm a selfish. The crown is heavy. I pray they my